Welcome, everybody. Here we are on day 3 at the CreativePro Week Partner Panel. It is such a pleasure to have you here, and both here and online. And my name is David Blattner. I'm the president of CreativePro Network. My job today is to help bring out some conversation and, even more importantly, not fall off the stage, which I feel precariously positioned right at the edge here. So if I laughed, you guys are doing okay. Thank you. Perfect. Perfect. You can catch
long
me.
Arms.
You do have the long arms.
Yeah, I do.
That's great. So I've got 2 people here with me. Very pleased to have on stage with me Marcus Radich from PageProof and Mark Hilton from Santa Cruz Software. And we're going to be talking with them about the environment, the whole world of partner solutions, and I think of it as an ecosystem. And I just want to say a couple things about that quickly. I've had this vision for a number of years of this triangle. There's a triangle, the cosmic triangle. This triangle, which on one corner is the users, and on the other corner is the large vendors, and typically Adobe in our case, the Adobe vendors, or perhaps Microsoft. But then the third corner is the third-party ecosystem. All of the developers who are doing scripts and add-ons and plugins and services and all the things that add on to the things that we need to do in the creative world. And, you know, most people live on just the two. They've got the users and the Adobe, or users and Microsoft, right? They're just saying, that's all we do. We just live in that world. And they never think outside to that third vertice. And that's a shame. It really is, because the triangle, as you may know from physics or school years ago, the triangle is the strongest shape in the universe. It is incredibly strong. You may notice that in our CreativePro branding, we have triangles everywhere. One of the reasons why these triangles are there in our branding is because we're all about bringing it together, bringing all the different pieces of that ecosystem together. That strong triangle, you only get the strength when you have all 3 pieces: the users, the primary developers, and that secondary or the third-party market. In my opinion, that's where the magic lies. That's where we can really take off and do amazing, amazing things. So that's why I'm so pleased that we have 2 major developers here who are going to be talking about some really cool things that they're working on, and we'll talk about that whole ecosystem as a whole, to see how you guys can become more productive, more efficient, and smile more while you work, which ultimately that's the goal, right? Is smiling more while you're working, getting more done, and enjoying it. So, that's why we're here, why I am so excited about doing this session, because I really want people to understand that relationship out there and to expand your awareness outside of our little vacuum and into that triangle. So I'm going to hand it over to each of you to talk briefly about yourselves. I'd love for you to introduce yourself. Marcus first, and then Marcus first, and then
we'll go to Mark. Yeah.
Then we're going to go to Mark.
Okay.
I'm just going close to far, and then we'll come back again, in order, exactly. M-A-R, M-A, M-A, M-A-R.
Well, actually, I'm a Mark as well.
Yeah.
M-A-R-C.
Yes.
But for some reason, someone in my family extended it to Marcus.
Well, but M-A-R-C alphabetically is before M-A-R-K. That's why we're doing it this way.
He's good.
Yeah, so that's...
And we also are sequential.
Marcus, can you tell us about yourself, your background? How did you get into this world? And what the heck is PageProof? Especially actually, I want to ask, how many people here were in Marcus's session yesterday morning? Okay, so he demoed PageProof, but you'll see a little bit more of that today. So tell us about yourself.
So I'm Marcus. I'm one of the founders and the CTO of PageProof. My background is kind of strange. So I had visions of doing artificial intelligence in the early 90s, 1991. So at that university, doing computer science and psychology and thought, this is the future. And then I'm still waiting. So meanwhile, I took a bit of a detour and thought, you know what? I'm going to be a retoucher. This is the best thing to get into. So I ended up working for Ann Geddes, the baby photographer, doing a lot of retouching work on Down in the Garden. If you look that up, you'll see Down in the Garden is one of the collections from the 90s. And that was all done mainly in Photoshop 2.51, which had no layers. So just imagine it. We're having to put like lettuce leaves over babies and change pots and move things around with no layers. Okay, I don't think anyone can really imagine how you do that these days. And I've cleanly forgotten how to do it now because layers turned up one day. Someone walked into our office, they dropped down a Power Macintosh, and we were like, what's a Power Macintosh? And they handed us a disk that said Photoshop 3.0 beta. And we were like, what is this magic disk that we have? Put it in the machine, layers. Layers for the first time. So that was the introduction, which was really magic. Worked in pre-press for a long time with a lot of tools that just simply don't exist anymore. And then ended up being fired by Steve Jobs because I was working with the clone manufacturers, and then the next day hired by Apple to go around and work for them. Fast forward, got into PageProof, worked in the creative industry for so long, starting off with that Apple experience, promoting color sync into and you know, color management into a lot of pre-press and agencies, and then just got into the whole publishing and design side of it. And the pain in the neck was emailing PDFs to people. Hate, hate, hate. So just getting lots of bombardments of PDF attachments from people back saying, change this, change that, wait a minute, that's on the same graphic. What do I do? So that's where PageProof was born. Yeah.
And the idea of PageProof, well, let's hold off, and then we'll come to that. So proofing is important. Mark with a K. With a K. Tell us, how did you get into this? You've also been in this business like the rest of us for a long time.
Well, since 1999. I came at it from a completely different perspective, more from the pure technology.
Is your mic?
It is on.
Where is it?
Where's
Oh, where's the lapel? It's down there.
Uh-oh, the mic went for a tumble. One moment.
Okay.
There we go.
I came at it from a completely different perspective, from the technology side. My background was in hardcore digital imaging for scientific purposes, satellite remote sensing. This was back in the 80s, long before Google Earth and all that sort of stuff. I worked for a Silicon Valley computer company who did hardware and software, again, all pure imaging. And I just sort of migrated from there to Sun Microsystems and worked as a marketing person in the imaging space. And then eventually, I was looking at Adobe in 1999. There was a job open as a group product manager for Photoshop. And I was like, right, I want to get the job as the group product manager for Photoshop. Put in my resume. I got a call back from Brian Lampkin, who was running that side of the business, and I was super excited. And basically, we went through the whole interviewing process, and he said, I'd like to offer you a job as the group product manager for FrameMaker. I was like, okay. What about Photoshop? Anyways, I took that job, and so that was in 1999, and from there I went from FrameMaker. I picked up InDesign. I ran the InDesign product management team for 10 years. So from InDesign 1.52, the Summit release, which was the first release that InDesign actually printed.
Right.
Remember that?
Right.
I remember that.
And I ran the InDesign business for 10 years through CS4. My team also ended up owning Illustrator, Dreamweaver, GoLive, Fireworks.
Oh my gosh.
I ran the product management team to transition from the individual Adobe products to the creative suites. So I ran that for four cycles. I left Adobe for a variety of reasons, which we don't need to get into right now. And I ran into Gabriel Harbiter and Peter Moreau, and we put our heads together. Gabe Harbs, if you might know him, he's well known in all of things, mostly around InDesign, InDesign Server, and InDesign scripting. And we put together our heads and came up with this great idea for basically putting InDesign documents online, so non-designers could actually do edits of InDesign documents using a standard web browser. And then we've evolved that to now having a connector for asset management systems and other storage systems to connect to the Creative Cloud apps. And then we also have a brand new UI product that's a full workflow turnkey system.
That's great. That's great. Whoa, that's loud. Would you mind moving that up maybe to your lapel? Would that work? Thank you so much.
Sure.
We're still working. By the way, if it looks like I'm texting my friends, I'm not. I'm actually online, because one of the things about this event that we're experimenting with is how do you do a live event here in DC and also online, right? And we've got quite a few people online watching, and so we're testing the idea of getting some of their questions, some of your questions out there, into me directly through our moderators. And so I'll be going back and forth and seeing what questions come up. So just so everyone's aware, what the heck is David doing? So this is really interesting. It's interesting also that both of you started with pixels. I guess in some ways that's what we had for the most part. That was the professional early 90s stuff. But your point about shifting quickly into InDesign, you kind of jumped over that a little bit, or you glossed over a little bit, but that was huge. And for most of us, anyone in this room who is an InDesign user, which is probably 99% of you, we have Mark to thank for helping make InDesign a thing that we actually a success that we could all use. So I just got to say thank you. That was really important work in the early days, turning something which was very, very rough and immature, helping guide that through the process, the business process into something that could be acceptable. So,
well, at that time, Adobe had an incredible team of very passionate product managers and engineers who they just wanted to pour their whole life into solving that problem and making InDesign successful. So it was at that point we had a very large team, very distributed team, looking at all the different dimensions of InDesign, like for example the ecosystem. We're talking about the ecosystem. That turned out to be one of the major roadblocks to InDesign success. Was there were no plugins, people were having trouble printing, there were no freelancers, the design schools weren't teaching InDesign. There was this whole world of everything outside of Adobe that just was not in place. So we had a team that was just focusing on those sorts of problems.
And yet, InDesign was created from the very beginning with extensibility in mind. And I think that was one of the most special things that happened with InDesign was the Adobe team learned from what happened through the 90s with Photoshop, Quark Express, and they said, wait a minute, extensibility is key. We can have a cool product, but it can do so much more when you can add to it, when you can build out from it, when we let developers do cooler things. And so from the very beginning, InDesign was designed to be extensible. In fact, InDesign itself, to this day, I find that a lot of InDesign users don't realize that InDesign is made of plugins. It's add-ons, whatever you want to call them. It is made of little extensible pieces that Adobe has pulled together into one package. And then developers, outside developers, start adding stuff onto it, but they act just like it's part of InDesign. This is a really interesting part of how and things are changing a little bit, but the idea of extensibility being baked in from the beginning is key, again, to this idea that Adobe wants you to move outside of just an all Adobe software. So really important thing. So Marcus, one of the things you also mentioned was you were saying that you were doing color sync, so right, you were dealing with color management stuff really early, and just the ideas of trying to manage color, manage images through the 90s was extremely difficult, but it's still difficult to this day. But what we do have, you also mentioned that PDF was kind of a hassle for you. What's it, I mean, for most of us, we're like, I don't know, you just send a PDF to somebody and they email it back, and what's the problem? Why don't you like that?
Yeah. I think in those days, on my job description was this word color sync. And it was one of my KPIs was to get color sync into every design studio and printing house that I could, which sounded great, so I signed on the bottom line and dove into the job, and then found that most people didn't know what color management was. And at that stage, everybody was doing things like, I have a TIFF, I need to save this TIFF as CMYK with no alpha channels and no compression, and do all these things so that when it got to the printer, the printing rip didn't just throw it out the window. So there was all this very CMYK-based workflows, which I know these days we don't have to worry about so much. There was a conversion, I guess, in the late 90s or mid to late 90s where people started bringing in RGB workflows where you could retouch and work in RGB, stay in RGB, place the PSD file into, I'm pointing this way, into InDesign, and then that would take it, particularly from CS InDesign's, from version 3 onwards, that was when it really started working well, you could just run an RGB workflow. And that was the game changer, was that the separations and everything were done just in time before it went onto the press. So it meant that color management wasn't necessarily, in the mid-range, wasn't really a problem for most designers. You'll find that some design teams right now, if they're doing uber high-end work, that they may still run some very specialized workflows, but it really works well these days.
It does. It really does. And it's interesting that talking about two important technologies that are happening here. One is the RGB, the shift to RGB, which has been going on for quite some time, but is critical. But then also the web interface that Santa Cruz software has been working on. Let's take a break here. I'd really like to see each of you show what you're doing. In fact, let's go ahead and start with Mark Hilton first, and show what is going on with Santa Cruz software. What is it that you're creating?
Right. So what I'm going to show you is the idea of taking an InDesign document that's on my local file system, and I want to be able to share that with my colleagues who have access to a DAM or Box or Dropbox. So I've just opened up this local InDesign document, and whoops, I opened the wrong InDesign document. Okay, so what you can see here on the right, these little monitor symbols, that's telling me that this document has all of these linked files, but they're locally linked.
And this panel is not normally in InDesign. This is
Linker UI. This is the panel that we build as our connector. So we connect to different digital asset management solutions, different storage systems, like again, Dropbox, Box, and so on. So normally this would be, you'd have to be moving these files up to the DAM or to the storage system manually. First of all, I know that some of these are probably in the DAM already. So I can just click on that button which says link to the cloud assets. And what Linker UI has done is it's gone up to the cloud and said, oh, you know what? Here are possibilities of assets that are actually the same assets that you have in your InDesign document. I can click on this, I can look at the thumbnail. If there are multiple versions, I can look through those multiple versions. And then in the end, what I can do is say, you know what? Those are the right ones. And it's going to now link those to those cloud assets. So now you can see the symbol here has changed to a cloud. So what that means is now InDesign and Linker UI know that that asset is actually an asset that's in the DAM. But there's these 4 assets here that are not in the DAM. Well, I can just simply upload those to the DAM. I'm going to upload them. I'm using Media Valet, by the way, in this case. So this is the Media Valet structure. what library and what collections it's going into, and now I'm just going to upload those.
Mark, can you hold on just 1 second? We're still having audio issues online, and we need to see if we can get that going.
Okay.
Fingers crossed.
So now you can see that all of those assets are actually now cloud assets. However, the InDesign document is not a cloud asset yet. So what I can do is now upload this InDesign document. Please save it. Upload it as a new asset. I'm going to upload it to the InDesign library, my demo. Okay, so this is now uploading to the DAM. And now anybody within my organization has access to this InDesign document. They have access to all of the linked assets. If somebody was to take one of those linked assets, like say a Photoshop file or an Illustrator file, modify it, check it back into the DAM, anytime somebody opens up this InDesign document, they'll be notified that that asset's been changed. And it doesn't matter whether it's Photoshop to InDesign or Illustrator to InDesign. This works also between Illustrator and Photoshop. So if you have an Illustrator asset placed in Photoshop and you've been managing it through Linker UI and a DAM, anytime any part of those assets are changed, Linker UI will notify you. So that's the communication. You know, in today's world where people are working more and more remotely, and a lot of things are going up to the cloud, this is super important. And this is one of these things that we've learned over the years. This is a fairly new product for us. It's about 1.5 years old. The core product that we had is called Print UI. This is the online InDesign documents. So now that this is in the cloud, as a designer, I can make some simple changes to this so that I can decide, or I can tell my users what objects they can edit and what objects they can't edit. So here is this same document up in the cloud. What I've done as a designer is I've said, you know what, this image can be changed. So let me go to my catalog.
And when you say cloud, we're in a browser.
We are in a web browser.
This is a web browser.
So we've written our own multi-line composer. So any edits you make to this document, any text edits, mimic exactly what you would get out of your InDesign desktop. The rendering engine is an InDesign server. So there's no intermediary conversions. Once you upload this document, it's an InDesign document. It stays as an InDesign document. When people have finished making their edits to this, non-designers typically, marketing people, salespeople, partners, distributors, so on, you can download an actual InDesign document. So again, it's pure InDesign the whole way. So I can, as the designer said, I can make simple changes, like I can replace images. I can edit this text here, but I can't edit this text over here. I can't change the font. I can't change the style.
And that's because the permissions were set by the designer.
Exactly. So if the designer wanted to allow me to change fonts and style and so on, they would give me those permissions. This is a multi-page InDesign document, so I can go from page to page. You can see which objects are editable, so just these text frames here. And then when I'm done, just press Finish. And it renders a PDF. In this case, it was a PDF. And it can be also uploaded to the DAM for access by any users. Or you can set up permissions so that the user can actually download the PDF. Or you can generate a PNG or a JPEG or what have you.
I love that. I love that.
And we have one more product, which is our branding UI product, which kind of pulls all this together into a turnkey portal that has permissions and workflows and all kinds of fancy stuff. And if you're interested after the session, we're just outside the door over here.
Thank you.
Sure.
This idea that you are you're connecting users to that thing's dangerous.
I think the clip is not tight. So
okay. It's an audio challenge. The idea that you're connecting users to their assets, wherever those assets are. They could be in a dam, they could be in a box.com, wherever they're storing that stuff, they can get to that very quickly. But then you're also you're connecting people out into these web browsers, taking their designs, an InDesign document, putting it into a web browser for editing, for other people to edit without InDesign. They don't have InDesign. I think is an incredibly powerful technology. It's really important. And you used a word in there that I think or a phrase that a lot of people don't know about, unfortunately, which is InDesign Server. That a lot of the putting your documents in the cloud, in a web browser, is based on InDesign Server is huge. Can you just say a little bit about what Server is and why that's important for people?
Why InDesign Server?
And what InDesign Server is. A lot of people have never touched that.
Oh.
They've never heard of it.
InDesign, it's literally InDesign on a server. The funny story, before there was an InDesign server, developers figured out that they could actually run desktop versions of InDesign on a server. Because it was programmable and easy to access. Adobe found out that was a bad thing because they were obviously losing licenses, and so we came up with the concept of InDesign Server. So in some respects, it's really a licensing thing, but in other respects, they've basically stripped out the interface part, and you can run InDesign on a server. Full API support, and the beauty of it is, as I was mentioning, when you take an InDesign document that was created on an InDesign desktop license and render it on InDesign Server, it's exactly the same thing because it is InDesign. And so the benefit is you can do this distributed access of documents and provide a web interface, and you solve a big problem a workflow problem for many designers, which is they don't want to have to do the little nitty, change this text, change that photograph. It helps them push that whole workflow out to their users. And at the same time, they're confident that those users can't mess things up because the designer has very specifically said, you can edit that object, and you can't edit that object, and you can edit that object only by doing this or that. And so that distribution makes it a very powerful workflow.
I'm pretty sure the end users could still find a way to screw it up. I mean, they're clever. They're clever out there.
Sure.
So the other thing you get is not just this distributed cloud editing, but you also get to create InDesign documents blindingly quickly. This idea that you could have InDesign, somebody suggested, I think it was Ole Kavern once said to me, InDesign Server is like InDesign sitting in a closet. There's no UI, there's no mouse, you don't see anything, you don't change anything. Everything is being touched through scripting. And so if you strip all of that off, you can make documents unbelievably quickly, like millions of documents if you need to, quickly. So it's not like, okay, I'm going to make a document and export to PDF, and now go to the next document and make a PDF. You can say, here's the data, go make me 100,000 PDFs or 100,000 InDesign documents or whatever. It's a fascinating technology and really shows how far you can push this InDesign. So
yeah, we have quite a few people who the generation of the output never actually, the creation of the output never actually hits the screen because it's all done in the background through database publishing, variable data publishing.
Yeah. But all based on InDesign.
And all based on InDesign.
It's still this technology. Yeah. You still have all the stuff that Adobe has given you, but you've extended it in this way. Yep. I think it's fascinating, very, very powerful. Thank you. Marcus, can we see a little bit about PageProof and cool stuff that you have been developing?
I'm going to stand up, and this laptop's going to be very low.
Yes. Well, you can use, if you want to drop it on there, that's easier. How about that?
That's much better. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent.
Problems with being tall. Okay. I'll just switch over to the right option here. Let me see. Number 6.
You're already on.
I'm already on. Okay, great. Hi, everybody. So I'm just going to go through a quick demo of the things that PageProof does. So we are an online proofing tool where you can take any kind of media that you're working on. So it can be inside of InDesign, it could be in Illustrator, Photoshop, it might be a website, or maybe it's a video project you're doing in Premiere Pro and After Effects. I'll show you some of the things we can do. Pretty much any creative asset created anywhere. If you love using Canva, we support that. If you love using PowerPoint for presentation work, Keynote, we support everything. But because this is a conference which does have a heavy InDesign focus, I'm going to show you some InDesign stuff. So here we are inside of InDesign. I have a panel here which I have, which is the PageProof panel. So this just shows here, again, showing the extensibility of InDesign. You can write these panels that you can just add in. And this is connected up with a PageProof account where I can send out my work directly from inside of InDesign out to a whole bunch of people who can then mark up suggested changes for me to make. Okay, so it's that whole idea of online proofing. So I can simply click on the button at the bottom of this panel, pops up a dialog which I can fill out with a few details. I can choose an appropriate workflow to send the proof to, which is a list of people in various stages. Click OK. It sends the proof directly from inside of your desktop app out via PageProof, and then your reviewers open up a web browser, and there is the design for them to mark up changes. So what can they do in here? Well, we've kept this super simple. Left-hand side of the screen has got a bunch of markup tools where they can go in and do things like, hey, this needs to be replaced. So they can just draw over the thing they want changed, write a comment in here so they can say remove or replace or whatever it is, add that comment directly onto the proof. Now I can zoom that in a bit. I see there's a copy change up here, so I can grab the text highlighter pen and I can just select over the text, and then inside of here I can fix the spelling. I'm not going to though, and add that comment directly on. And there's also a freehand drawing tool, so your team members can just draw on the proof like they would if they're using a marker pen with printouts, which may be what some of you are using now, because that we find is quite common. So yeah, so you can go through, they can mark up the changes that they'd like you to make, and then you can simply see those changes come through to your design tool. So I'll just do one more inside of here. So if I just grab this and say this block of copy, I'd like to shorten that a little bit, sort of say actually at least amount of copy, and add that in as well. All right, now your reviewers, all they need to do is say, hey, I'd like these changes made, so they just select changes please, and that submits their decision back to you so you can decide to implement the changes that they've asked for. Now a couple of other things that are inside this interface. We've got full version history here, so you can see the entire history of the life cycle of this document. So you can go back at any time. When someone says, hey, why did you change that? You can say, because in version 4 you said to. Conversation over. Great, love it. So that's good. We've got detection here for things like, you know, the colors here. So we can see this is a 5-color print job. We can see the fonts that are being used just to make sure that Arial hasn't snuck into the design. So that's inside of there. And there's rulers and grid lines here for people to use. And even if you're a print nerd, there's a color separation mode. So you can go through and look at the color separations for the proof as well. And if you're a super geek like me, this is great. Love it. Anyway.
And again, we're in a browser here.
We're in a browser.
So this is someone who's not in InDesign. You've sent it off to the...
Yeah, and this can go out to multiple people. They can all comment at the same time. They can all see each other's comments. And then you get back one set of changes, okay? Not 20 PDFs hitting your inbox and you've got to try and figure out what to do. You get one set of changes. So then you go back into InDesign, and you can then click onto the proof inside this panel. It then loads all the comments on the right-hand side it's on the right-hand side, that you've been assigned. And you can click onto these comments, and it will show you the markup directly inside on top of your design. So you have absolutely no question about what it is people want you to do. So you can go through, make that change, and then check off that option so it takes it off your to-do list. So it almost runs it like a to-do list. If it's a copy change like this, it'll highlight the piece of copy. You can look at it and say, select, replace, and it will make the text change for you. So no more copy-paste, no more retyping anything. And with this one here, this big paragraph change that we saw, I can simply say, let's select that, replace the text. Now the shorter copy's in there. So got this nice option there to stop you having to type over the top of things. Now, one last thing, I'll just switch back into PageProof. I'm going to show you a couple of different proofs and then I'll hand back. This is a website proof. So if you're looking at this, this is a small boutique German car company called Mercedes-Benz. They sell a few cars to a niche market. So you can see this is their live website. It's just been loaded into PageProof as a URL. So now members of the team can come here and they can say, well, show me what this looks like on an iPhone, for example. So we then show it on an iPhone-sized device and, of course, in full responsive as well. So that's how we do website proofing. You can just grab the red pen tool and you can just draw on the website and just say, please change that car to something more modern. No, it's a classic. Yeah.
Well, I think you've answered one of my first questions, which is we've seen some of it, like with share for review and PDF comments, import PDF comments in InDesign. We've seen some of that technology from Adobe already, and I can see immediately that you're going way beyond just InDesign. You're going to web pages. I know you were talking about emails, PowerPoint, video, and all. So you're handling all kinds of apps.
And I'll show you one more, which is a kind of a crazy one. We decided one day, because we are definitely design nerds at heart, all of the team, we decided to do font proofing. So you can drag and drop a font onto PageProof, and we will make you a font proof, which looks like this. So you can send this off to somebody and get their feedback on the font. But what we've done also is we've given you an accessibility character distinction here. So you can see these are the characters that they should be.
Wow. And
this is what this font represents them in. So if you've got accessibility checks that you want to do on a certain font, then we've got this built into the font proofing in PageProof. So it's very nerdy, but it's great fun, and it's good for checking those sorts of things before you lay out an entire document and realize actually the accessibility for reading is terrible. Mm-hmm. So those are the sorts of things that we like to do.
That's very cool. I just want to push on InDesign though one more time. Mm-hmm. It's just, it's where my heart lies. So in InDesign, why would we be using PageProof instead of what Adobe offers?
Yeah, I can give you a few key points. Number one, you can send proofs out to a workflow. So in Share for Review, you pop in a list of emails and it goes to everyone at once, even the legal team. And you'll know that you don't want the legal team involved commenting on design, right? So with PageProof, you can say, go to this team first, then this team, then the legal team. So you can stage the review. So that's one. Number two is the rendering of your work. So we render overprints, transparencies, and it's a 100% pixel-perfect accurate representation of your work in InDesign. Unfortunately, Share for Review does not support transparency, overprint, or any of the special effects of InDesign. Not sure why, but that is something. So rendering of your media is important as part of that as well.
That's important. The idea that you've got a workflow, that you're moving from, because PageProof makes most sense when you're dealing with a team. It's all about teams, right? It's teams of people, and you almost always wanted to go to one person before somebody else. I really think that's key, and it was a key aha moment for me when I first was learning about PageProof. I was like, oh, wait a minute, that just makes so much more sense than send it to a person, bring it back to me, send it to another person, bring it back to me, or send it to everybody at the same time. So that's huge.
Yeah, and we have automated reminders built in as well. So you can literally send to a workflow, turn around and do something else. PageProof will chase the people that don't look at your proof for you. regularly chase them. So it's great fun.
That's huge. Now, I want to ask each of you a couple of questions, and then we'll open up to other questions. We've got some questions from online as well. One of the biggest challenges I would think that you guys have is that it's incredibly hard to change people's workflows. I mean, when people have a habit, and some of us have been doing this a very long time, right? When you've got a system in place and it works, it's hard to get people to change that. And yet, the only way to improve is to change, right? Improvement, by definition, requires change. But how do you do that? How do we get people to start thinking outside the box and saying, wait a minute, why do I have to do all the edits myself in InDesign when I could just work with an InDesign server solution and put it in the browser? Why do I have to have all my assets locally when I could be using a DAM? Why do I have to do a PDF email approval process, which seems like it works? It kind of works. I mean, we've been doing it a while. It's, okay, it's painful. I have this line.
That's the answer right there.
Well, it's fine. This is what I keep coming back to this word, fine. The solution we have right now is fine. Do we need to change it? And the answer is, well, if you want amazing, then you don't settle for fine. But how do we get people to move past fine to what you guys are suggesting? Mark?
Well, I think anybody who's trying to introduce new products that affect workflow, the first thing, how it affects us, is we have to be patient, because it's not going to happen overnight, right? I think one of the benefits of being a third-party developer is we can introduce products that affect workflow, and we can introduce them incrementally and learn each time what it is that the end user, what pain points do they actually have. You can talk to people and they'll say, well, I don't like the workflow for reviews. Well, you have to implement something and then incrementally address those pain points. And over time, as a small company, not as Adobe, at Adobe, results have to be pretty much instantaneous. If you put out a new workflow, when I was at Adobe, we actually, I don't think very few people even knew about this. Adobe created a workflow project called Stilton, we worked on it for like 2 years, and then we didn't get a lot of traction, so poof, it was gone. And so for us, it's really a matter of understanding the customer, delivering products incrementally, and then learning and finding out those pain points. Like, digital asset management systems, I think, are a really good example. They've been around for, 20 years? 30 years. You talk to a creative, they go, yeah, we should be using a DAM. Well, but why don't you? Well, what you learn is, I think one of the things we've learned is, because they want to live inside Photoshop or InDesign or Illustrator. They don't want to have to go out to this other thing to manage assets. So that's where you learn, well, then put the management of assets right in the application so that you're not leaving Photoshop or InDesign. You can just drag and drop like you do from Bridge or whatever, and then you learn. So for us, that's important.
Makes a lot of sense. I mean, let people stay in their happy place. For me, if I have to leave InDesign, I'm out of my happy place. So I just want to be right there in that program.
Yep.
Marcus, how do you feel like we could get people to shift their workflows? What have you find useful?
We find people come to us when they're fed up. So they're coming to us saying, I'm bombarded by emails from people. I've got people that don't respond to my PDFs that I send out. And you've got designers that are sitting there working away now trying to collate comments from emails. Someone's scanned in something and sent it over. Yes. Someone's just called by their desk. Someone's called them on the phone telling them, hey, on paragraph 7 of page 88, can you change that to blue? What? Okay, wait a minute. So it's not really a designer's job to be a collator. So what we do actually to help with that change, the designers typically come to us with, I'm in pain. And we say, great, but we need to convince your entire team. You can't just create, the designers already know there's a better way. It's now trying to convince the rest of the organization. So what we do when a designer comes to us and we have a session and show them through PageProof is we say, look, we can actually do a broader demo to your team members, and we also have an extensive onboarding and training which we package in to the platform. And in fact, our support and our onboarding, we use G2 as our review area, and we're scored 99 out of 100 for our onboarding and training and support. So that is the number one, because again, it helps the person in the organization with the pain get out of pain, and we help them do that. So that's how we do it.
That's great. That's great. Do we have any questions here in the audience about either of these solutions or any of the crazy stuff we're talking about? Yeah.
In the PageProof thing that you have pulled up within InDesign after somebody submits like some changes or some, is there a way to not accept a change, like deny a change?
So is there any way, once somebody has suggested a change through the browser, can you deny it? Can you say, no, we don't want to make this change?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can just not do it, which is number one. And number two is that you can reply to it and say, I'm not doing this, if you want to. So you do have a couple of ways of doing it. But we don't have a deny checkbox. Keep everything very positive. Yeah, so you can communicate, and you don't have to make the change. You can still upload a new version, ignoring all the feedback if you want to. It's at the designer's discretion. Yeah.
Can you delete the comment that the person sent in so it's not there in the panel anymore?
So once the proof is locked, all of the comments are still there for context, reference, and for audit, because a lot of people, again, when they come back in a year's time and say, but I said da-da-da, so we tend to keep them in there. You could possibly communicate with the person and ask them to remove their own comment, so you can do that. But yeah, it stays in there for context. Yeah.
Question for Mark Hilton about Print UI, Linker UI. Is Linker UI a DAM itself, or if not, then which DAM do you work with?
It is not a DAM. We work with a large number, Brand Folder, Media Valet, Binder, WebDAM, Box, Dropbox. The whole list is up on our Canto. The whole list is up on our website, santacruzsoftware.com.
Cool. And Marcus, another one from online. Does our client need to install any software on their computer in order to make edits? I don't think so.
No, not required. The only thing is if it's a website proof, because of the nature of website proofing, it will prompt them to add a Chrome extension or a Firefox extension just for website proofing. But for all other proofing types, there's no software to be installed.
And is there a cost to those people to do that?
No cost. No, reviewers are free. If you have 10,000 reviewers in your organization, we don't mind. Yeah.
If I had 10,000 reviewers in my organization, I would mind. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
that's
that would be
crazy. Other questions here in the room? Yeah, Greg.
Hi, Marcus. Are you going to eventually move towards having this technology for use with like Illustrator and Photoshop as well?
So does PageProof, will PageProof work with Illustrator or Photoshop or other tools?
So yes, we support Illustrator, Photoshop, InDesign, Premiere Pro, After Effects, and InCopy. So 6 Adobe applications are fully supported by this panel today. Yeah.
And Mark, going back to Print UI, creating these templates that you can upload and let other people use, it says, how does Print UI handle templates? I'm not entirely sure what that means, but can you just talk a little bit more about that template creation process?
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, to create a template, you just open up InDesign, either create a brand new InDesign document or open an existing InDesign document. We have a panel inside InDesign, it's called Print UI Management Panel. You go through a couple of really simple steps, like you initialize the template, which creates a couple of extra layers, and then the designer literally just drags objects, for example, that they don't want the users to edit into these couple of special layers. You can lock layers, which means the container ends up being not editable, but the contents are editable once it gets inside our editor. And then right from InDesign, you just hit a upload button and it uploads to the server, and it's done. I mean, you can get it done in just a few minutes. We don't do anything to the InDesign document except add a couple of special layers to it.
So you're saying that's magic?
It's magic, yeah. And actually, I wanted to go back to the linker UI question.
Yeah.
If you go to our website and you don't see our DAM that is your favorite DAM, contact us and we will do the integration. We do it for free. We don't charge any of our DAM partners, so if you don't see the DAM of your choice, just let us know and we'll add it.
Wow, I didn't know that. Very interesting. Very cool. Other questions here? Thoughts about, yeah.
So our marketing communication office, it houses like the creative people, the web people, writers, and we use Workfront, which I think Adobe just purchased not that long ago.
No, so Adobe did not purchase WordPress. That's still a separate thing.
The
No, they
Workfront.
did Workfront.
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 Yeah.
I'm sorry, did you say Workfront?
Yes.
My apologies. I heard wrong. Okay, so they're using Workfront.
Yes, we're using Workfront. I will upload like a PDF and people can make comments and, I can ask multiple people to look at the same proof at the same time so that they can add comments and everybody can see each other's edits and comments, which is very helpful. But I'm wondering if there would be any way in the future to kind of combine PageProof with Workfront so that there's
Is there a way to combine PageProof with Workfront? So Adobe has purchased Workfront, which is a similar, in some ways, proofing tool. Put up an argument. How do we use it? How do we use both together, or why should we be using PageProof?
So we have a number of integrations where companies come to us and say, can we please have the proofing engine from PageProof in this tool? So good examples of that, like Monday.com has PageProof built in as the proofing tool. And Asana, Trello, those kinds of things. We've integrated with all of those. We haven't yet had a request for Workfront, but I'll get on the phone to Adobe. Yeah. Okay, an official ask. Okay, we'll get on the phone.
That sounds great. I'm just curious, what else should people know? For many people, they either have only used the Adobe tools, the Microsoft tools. They only use the basics. They haven't extended out into the ecosystem. What do they need to know, both the good and the bad? I mean, what should they be aware of? And I'm also keenly aware that we are in DC at the moment, and I know that somebody out there is thinking, well, my IT department, there's no way they're going to allow me to use anything other than what's been approved. What do they need to know to be able to extend past?
Because we are predominantly web-based, it just comes in via a web browser. There are organizations where IT may not allow extensions to be added into the design tools, but you can still use the browser interface to send out your review, because you can drag and drop your files into the browser. You don't have to use the add-on inside of InDesign or Photoshop or Illustrator to send out your proof. So that's the way that some of our government customers, in quotes, get around that having to install software. So you can still get all the benefits of using PageProof and other tools just by using the browser version. But of course that means when you're wanting to make the changes, you've now got two screens open, one with the browser view, one with the InDesign document, but it's still much better than receiving 44 emails per second. So yes, the advantages definitely outweigh that. So I think that's one way, is to look at the products that you're looking at, PageProof or other, and just see whether there is an absolute just web-based way of using the tool to get a good benefit out of it without having to install software. If you then, down the track, can prove a case that this tool has been a major benefit in its web capacity to your department, that case could then go to IT. They will take their time to assess it, and maybe in the future you'll get that extension approved. So get the benefit today, and maybe get the extra benefit later on down the track. So that's one way you could attack it.
Well, I think probably the same answer in that particular context. Although we've had a lot of companies come to us and say, my IT department won't let us do this, but since your, for example, branding UI is completely browser-based, we can go completely around them. We don't even have to talk to them. So we get around those sorts of limitations. I think in general, when you're dealing with third-party plugins and extensions, I think the advice that I would say is, really do your homework. There's for two reasons. One is, there's a lot of third-party plugins, and one of the benefits of third-party plugins is that they can really tailor the experience to your particular problem or something very close to your particular problem. So, do your homework in terms of finding that right vendor. Also, finding that right vendor means finding, the vendor that's been around for a while, that has, a good support structure. One of the last things you want to end up with is a situation where the vendor is pointing their finger at Adobe because, Photoshop doesn't do this. It's not my plugin. It's, Adobe's plugin. So, make sure that you find the right vendor that has a good support team that is really going to support your situation, and it really has, I think you probably have the same sort of connections we do. We have a lot of connections with the Adobe engineering teams, and so if we run into a bug that affects our product, we know who to contact at Adobe and say, hey, can you guys put this into the next release of InDesign or Photoshop?
I have one more tip, actually. All of the extensions and add-ons for Adobe tools, if they come from the Adobe Marketplace inside the Creative Cloud app, those have been vetoed and checked by Adobe to a certain level before they go into the store. So that might be something to also check out with your IT team and say, well, check with Adobe because they've gone through them somewhat and check them for security and a few bits and pieces. So
I'm so glad you brought up the Adobe Exchange site. I mean, I think that's really important. A lot of people don't know. I don't feel like Adobe has done a very good job of...
They changed it to Marketplace.
Oh, it's Marketplace. It was Exchange, now it's Marketplace. You can find it inside the Creative Cloud app if you... somewhere. But I don't feel like they've done a good job of it. You want to show that from within the extension?
I'll just show it just here.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead and...
Want me to switch?
Yeah, if we can switch.
Thanks.
So if you're inside of the, inside your Creative Cloud application, if you go into Stock and Marketplace, on the end here, it says Plugins. So you click on Plugins, and it'll show you the plugins that Adobe has vetoed and has available to install directly from there. So it's a good place to check those.
It is. There's so much stuff out there. There's free stuff, there's commercial stuff, and it's a great way, like you said, to find out what kind of solutions are out there. So good. We're going to have to wrap this up. I just want to say thank you so much to both of you for being here, sharing these ideas, and sharing your services. I think it's important for people to expand their brains into what if I started going beyond just the tools I have already on my machine. How could I become more efficient, more productive, and smile more, right? Start doing, being happier as we work and not getting those 10,000 reviewers. So thank you so much for being here. Round of applause for our panelists, please.